Hi, companions. Which nation is the most impressive on the planet? Which nation is the greatest superpower? In the event that you can't respond to this question effectively, then, at that point, think. Which country's economy is the biggest? Which country's gross domestic product is more than $20 trillion? Which nation's organizations are the most popular? Which nation's movies have impacted the world most? Which nation has won the most Nobel Prize? What's more, which nation has won the most Olympic awards? Which nation has the most grounded military power? The solution to this multitude of inquiries is America. America. Also, America. However, the inquiry is: how did the USA turn into a superpower? How did they turn out to be so strong? We should attempt to sort it out in the present video. Companions, this diagram shows the historical backdrop of the most recent 2,000 years. The commitment of every country to the worldwide gross domestic product. You'd see that before the 1800s. India and China were the two greatest superpowers on the planet. The vast majority of the exchange and financial exercises spun around India and China. Furthermore, it remained so for a very long time. Yet, after the 1900s, over the most recent 100 years as it were, the USA began acquiring predominance. What's more, laid out such a huge offer in the worldwide gross domestic product. How could it become conceivable? We really want to dig into history to grasp it. In the year 1492, the Italian voyager, Christopher Columbus, found some Caribbean islands close to North America. After this, the Europeans got to know about America. Furthermore, the colonization of America began by the Europeans. During this time, Red Indians lived in America. They're otherwise called local Americans. There were various clans. South America was generally colonized by Spain. Today is known as Latin America. This is the justification for why in the greater part of the South American nations, Spanish is spoken. England laid out its most memorable province in America around the 1600s. France began colonizing as well. At first, these were the three fundamental powers: England, France, and Spain. They colonized North America. In the years that followed, the number of inhabitants in the local Americans living in America diminished by 80 to 90%. There are a few purposes behind it. Yet, the main motivation is the sicknesses that the European colonizers carried with them. Illnesses like smallpox and flu. The local Americans hadn't fostered the insusceptibility to battle against these. A very long while later, on 4th July 1776, the American progressives pronounced their freedom from the Britishers. What's more, hence, America turned into another country. Here, the U.S. of America was conceived. These are significant stories in their own freedoms. In any case, we should leap to post-1850. Since, in the event that you'll see the diagram, America's diagram began rising solely after 1850. This was the period when the English, French and Spanish colonizers, had involved a few regions all over the planet. India was likewise a province of the English Raj. In this situation, the nation of the USA had proactively turned into a popularity-based country. So, if any new country pondered amalgamating with the USA, or on the other hand turning into a piece of the English, French or Spanish settlements, each nation would have liked to join the USA, since they would get a similar opportunity and a majority rules system that few conditions of the USA were beginning to get. This is the reason the states like Florida, Illinois, and Ohio liked to join the US of America, rather than staying a province under the Spanish or English government. In 1836, Texas was an express that got its independence from Mexico. In any case, Mexico was all the while torturing them such a lot of that they decided to join the USA. Essentially, the states, consistently, continued to join the USA. Furthermore, the US of America continued to develop. Each state had motivation to join the USA. However, don't botch America to have been totally innocuous. It was a majority rule country, sure. However, America's aim was to grow its region however much as could be expected. Hence, in 1867, the Alaskan domain was purchased by America from Russia at the cost of $7.2 million. There's additionally the territory of Hawaii. It's in the Pacific Sea. Today, you'd feel that the domain is such a long ways from the USA. How might it be a piece of the USA? Since the USA added it. In 1898, the USA ousted the realm of Hawaii. Also, involved its domain. Hypothetically, the USA was not a colonizer, like England, France, and Spain. Yet, it sure acted like them. Whenever seen according to the point of view of certain spots. The areas of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines were likewise attached by the USA in 1898. By the U.S. President William McKinley. The USA paid $20 million to Spain to add on the Philippines. However, today, the Philippines is a free country. Since in 1946, the Philippines got its autonomy from the USA. All that cash squandered. By the 1900s, the USA had turned into a huge country. Various regions were a piece of the USA. Furthermore, clearly, the greater the country, the greater is the economy and the gross domestic product. This is the explanation. The USA involved a huge part of the worldwide gross domestic product on the diagram. Be that as it may, this was just the start. The genuine wizardry occurred somewhere in the range of 1900 and 1950. Do you recollect what occurred during these 50 years? There were two universal conflicts. Also, where did these two universal conflicts happen? In Europe. France, Germany, the UK, Spain, Italy. They were all battling among themselves in the two universal conflicts. Furthermore, the USA was perched uninvolved. Despite the fact that the USA had partaken in the universal conflicts, it provided weapons to these nations. The conflicts weren't in on the USA's area. Various American officers kicked the bucket in the universal conflicts. In any case, monetarily, the USA wasn't antagonistically impacted. The USA was the main country, as a matter of fact, to have benefited from the universal conflicts. They sold such countless weapons to Germany, France, and other European nations that they created a net gain. Also, the nations like the UK, Germany, and France were completely crushed. It wasn't so much that the USA had attempted to exploit all the annihilation. It was simply a question of chance that the USA was creating gains during the universal conflicts. At the point when the conflicts began in the European nations, the Europeans felt that their monetary standards would lose their qualities. Furthermore, that their economies would crash. Thus, to safeguard their abundance, they chose to purchase the US dollars. Since the US dollar was a steady cash. Furthermore, America was an entirely steady country during the universal conflicts. So many individuals got US dollars. Furthermore, the worth of the US dollar rose a great deal. In 1944, when World War II was at its last stage, also chose to keep their monetary standards stable, to connect their monetary forms to the US dollar. Furthermore, the US dollar would be connected to gold. Furthermore, clearly, the unified nations won World War II. What's more, the US dollar turned into the global cash. After this, associations like the worldwide money-related asset and the assembled countries were laid out, wherein America assumed a vital part. GATT was one such undertaking. The overall settlement on taxes and exchange. It was established in 1947 by 23 nations. These nations chose, to help their financial development, they would diminish the exchange obstructions among them. Significance, rather than advancing Swadeshi, native items, and patriotism, they would advance worldwide exchange and globalization. This was subsequently made into WTO in 1995. After 1950, America and the Soviet Association arisen as the two primary superpowers. Also, here started the virus war. The conflict between the USA and the Soviet Association is known as the virus war. This was a philosophical conflict among socialism and free enterprise. However, rather than battling straightforwardly, they had an intermediary war. Rather than battling in their own nations, they began battling in different nations. In the nations where the USA believed that socialist thoughts were building up some decent forward momentum, it proceeded to overturn states. Once in a while, by financially subsidizing the resistance. Once in a while, by subsidizing fear-based oppressor rebel gatherings. Some of the time even straightforwardly killing progressives. Like in the 1964 Bolivian overthrow, where Che Guevara was executed by the agents of the CIA. In Activity Tornado, the Taliban assailants of Afghanistan were subsidized to stop the impact of the Soviet Association. What's more, that is the explanation fearmonger bunches were made here. Comparative stories were found in Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Iran, Congo, Dominican Republic. There are a few different models from these nations. Due to meddling in the inward governmental issues of such countless nations, a few nations turned out to be straightforwardly subject to the USA. Thus America turned out to be much more impressive. This is the motivation behind why today there are in excess of 800 American Army installations in excess of 70 nations. To accomplish this during the virus war, America needed to burn through huge amount of cash on its military. Furthermore, that is the reason America's tactical power is the most incredible in this present reality. Also, this isn't absolutely great. I'll explain to you why toward the finish of the video. In 1949, America framed the NATO collusion with the European nations to stop the impact of the Soviet association. This NATO collusion actually exists. Along these lines, America has forever been helpful with the West European nations. What's more, a large portion of the West European nations were intensely dependent on America for such countless years, since their own economies were obliterated. America was very strong. To fault the whole country for these unfriendly impacts wouldn't be correct, since various presidents were confirmed in the USA. A portion of these presidents zeroed in on military power, like Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, George Shrubbery, and Donald Trump. Then again, a few presidents zeroed in on framing quiet coalitions. Also, they weren't excessively keen on the military. As a result of them, the nation has developed calmly. Like all violence, a VP of the USA, Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Jimmy Carter, and sleeping enclosure Obama. Woodrow Wilson was the leader of the U.S., who chose to keep America out of World War I. What's more, he meddled in 1917 just when it was obvious that the conflict would end with America's impedance. He shaped the class of countries. It was a global body like the unified countries, laid out before the assembled countries trying to carry harmony to the entire world. During the virus war, the world guide seemed to be this. Essentially, every nation had collaborated with one or the other America, or on the other hand with the Soviet Association. So it was business as usual when essentially every one of the nations had decided to collaborate with both of the nations. Both the nations developed considerably more remarkable. Both the nations became superpowers. After the 1990s, when the Soviet Association was deteriorated, there remained, clearly, just a single superpower on the planet. That was America. This large number of reasons were international. However, there were other inner reasons also, in light of which America could turn out to be a strong superpower. One such inner explanation is that the American approaches generally pulled an ability. There are such countless instances of this. What's more, these reasons are legitimate even today. Consider it. Kalpana Chawla, Sunita Williams, Satya Nadella. What number of such Indians became fruitful in the wake of going to America? Albert Einstein, a German, became famous subsequent to going to America. Elon Musk, a South African, came to America and turned out to find true success. America's strategies and its way of life. Supports ability. Advances development. Yet, even in the wake of turning out to be a strong superpower, companions. What is the ground truth of a typical American? The homeownership rate in America was just 65.8% in 2020. Over 30% of Americans don't possess houses. America is perhaps of the most inconsistent country on the planet. The top 1% individuals own 42.5% of the nation's riches. The medical care arrangement of America is pricey and lacking. The corpulence levels have arrived at unimaginable highs in America. Numerous understudies can't bear the cost of their schooling cost expenses. An advanced degree is so costly in America that the understudy obligations are in millions. Also, there could be no appropriate weapon regulations in America. In excess of 600 mass shootings occurred soon in America in 2020. In excess of 3,000 individuals passed on as a result of it. Rather than spending such a great amount on the military, had America spent the cash on the advancement of its residents, being a superpower might have implied something. Today, the nations like Norway, Denmark, Sweden have outperformed America by a ton regarding human turn of events. Yet, these nations are not known as superpowers. It very well might be on the grounds that these nations aren't as strong monetarily. Their military isn't as strong. However, for an everyday person to carry on with his life is better in these Nordic nations in contrast with living in America. Assuming there is any illustration in this video, it will be that a nation shouldn't endeavor to be a superpower. It ought to zero in on improving itself. It ought to zero in on working on the existences of its residents. Let the fantasy about being a superpower stay that, a fantasy. I genuinely want to believe that you loved this educational video. In the event that you enjoyed it, remark beneath. What different subjects might you want to see recordings on? How about we meet in the following video? Much thanks to you.